Hey, this is the Sword and the Pen Reflections. It is my casual alternative to the more formal channel, the Sword and the Pen, link up there. So I have completed the Six of Crows duology and the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and I have also completed watching the series on Netflix for Shadow and Bone. That would be season 1 and 2. And I asked all of you guys to send me any questions that you wanted me to address directly, and you did, and let's get to it. First question, V the Tree asks, do you prefer the show or book version for each of the main characters? And I went through in advance and just kind of marked them on there for myself. Alina, I like her better in the show. So in the books, she was very concerned about not being pretty enough for Mal, and this was kind of a repeating doubt in her in book 1 and 2 especially. It definitely was better in book 3, and I found that so obnoxious. I'm glad she grew out of it, so that showed some growth. But it was such an unlikable thing for me that I got tired of it very quickly, especially when Mal in the book was not so great, which brings me to our second character. Show Mal was definitely better than book Mal. And I know that there are a lot of people who really love the Alina and Mal ship, but I struggled with it in the books because he basically blew her off so much and let his friends treat her with rudeness. And to me, that's a very unlikable quality, and it was hard for me to let go. Also, throughout the series, he was constantly complaining about how, they couldn't be together, and it was not done in a way that showed the maturity that show Mal did. So in the show, I really liked what they did with him in the second season especially, where he was completely supportive of Alina up front all the time. Whatever it was she wanted to do, he was there to help, and he went along with it. Even when she went and got engaged to Nikolai, he recognized that, look, this is what you have to do in order to, secure yourself in this position of leadership, and he can be a great support to you. And Alina got super mad at him and was saying, why aren't you upset? And he goes, I am upset, but what can I do about it? He has to go along with it because this is what has to be done. That is far more likable, that he is putting the good of others above himself. And in the book, he wasn't doing that. He was kind of marching along, but so begrudgingly that it made you go, you know what, Mal, just leave if you want to. So I definitely see why young adults especially would really be interested in this pairing, but for me, it was just obnoxious. I much preferred them in the show than in the books, 100%. My sister actually pointed out to me, and I didn't catch onto this as much, was that Mal didn't seem to really love and accept Alina or feel happy with where their relationship was until after she lost all her powers. And that's definitely a bad thing. I would have to go back and skim through it to see if that was really the case, but I think she's right, and that's no good. So show Mal wins, book Mal, no. Okay, Kirigan in the book. Now, this is a struggle because in season 1, Kirigan was so much better in the show. I really liked him. I thought it was great that they made him more complex because we got to see his past and all kinds of other things that I liked looking at and understanding why he was the way that he was. And, it was kind of the twist that he wasn't the good guy at the end, and you were sort of going, wait, is he the bad guy? I liked that. But then for season 2, they decided he's a mustache twirler, but sometimes he's really good and you feel bad for him, and sometimes he's just the mustache twirler. And that was inconsistent with continuing this trend of not really knowing if he's good or bad. He was obviously bad by season 2, and it made the things that were good about him, or the things that they were trying to show, we should feel sorry for him. I didn't feel that sorry for him. And it was such extremes like this, it just felt like there was inconsistent growth. In the books, so I liked what they did in season 1, in season 2, no. Now, in the books, it was a similar thing, but I would say once the reveal happened, they were like, he's just the bad guy. And he was a very proactive bad guy in the books, which I liked, because the good guys had to run away from him. And that's how scary he was. He was hunting them down. In the show, he wasn't really doing that. I mean, the Nikolai getting turned into I think it's supposed to be a Nichevoya type creature, but I got more of the impression of more like a Volcra type creature in the book. That happens in, yes, at the very beginning of the book of, or close to the beginning of Ruin and Rising. And that was caused by Kirigan attacking and turning him into this. So he was much scarier as a villain, and you saw this evil in him, and you knew that, wasn't there something good in him in the beginning, or nope, that was all just fake. And then to get to the ending where you see that he really was, just afraid of being alone, and he was a pitiable sort of person, it makes that kind of hit a little harder, that what our first assumptions of him were probably correct, and that all this evil that we saw him doing in the middle, that was his desperation to kind of gain control of his life and of the world around him. And then at the end, when he'd lost everything, we just saw the fear that was underneath all of that. And so I liked what they did with him in the book. What Lee did with him in the book was so good. The show could have learned from that. So hard for me to say which one I like better with Kirigan. Okay, Nikolai. I definitely liked Nikolai in the show. I think they played up his character a little bit more because they were pulling in stuff, I'm guessing, from the King of Scars, which I have not read. And I think that was a good choice because I thought he was a super intriguing character, and we needed that always noble guy to kind of contrast everybody. So when everybody's gray, that can get boring. I know that we like to have morally gray characters, but when you make everybody gray, it kind of makes you go like, what is there to look up to? So for me, the characters who were not gray, who came out like, okay, we've got Nikolai, he's clearly a good guy. Tolia, he's apparently no flaws, I really liked having those as like a relief from the constant of what we were getting with everybody else. That yes, they were good characters, but they had these struggles with things that were morally questionable. Actually, Mal was pretty portrayed as being pretty good. So I guess he counts as another one. Interesting that maybe because the book sort of spoiled the Mal character for me, I wasn't as drawn to him in the show. And there's other reasons too. I thought that their romance was very YA, but anyway, it does make sense to the lore of the series. Let's keep going. Zoya, that's a tough one because she was kind of a nothing character in the show. I liked her in the show simply because we got to see more of the vulnerable side of her, and I don't know, it's hard to say. There was more of her in the books, but in the show, I felt like, especially in the end of season 1, they were like, oh, let's give you this backstory on Zoya. They didn't really play out enough of her character for us to see a transition from the schoolgirl villain to the very powerful, I'm glad she's on our side kind of girl at the end. But yeah, that's a tough one for me also. I guess I would say that she was not a character I had a huge amount of interest in, which is fine because she's a side character. She's not a main player. And I know she pops up in Crooked Kingdom, and I liked that. I certainly liked seeing Zoya and Jenya in Crooked Kingdom, but I'm still, she's just there, I liked a lot of the comments that she made, but I think just because she wasn't super important, she didn't stand out to me all that much. Jenya, definitely preferred book Jenya to show Jenya, only because we had a lot more interactions between her and Alina in the book, and we also saw Jenya as being outcast by the other Grisha, and in the show they didn't do that at all, so I was instantly sympathetic towards the Jenya character in the books as opposed to in the show. And other than that, they didn't change a whole lot about her, so I'm gonna say book Jenya. I liked book Jenya better. David. He did not stand out a whole lot to me in the book, and I think it's because there's just so many characters. He was sort of like a Zoya character to me. I really enjoyed the actor portrayal of the David character, so I'm gonna say, and this is just strictly a surface level thing, I liked the actor who played David in the show, and so I like show David better. And that's a really big plus in the series. I think all the actors did such a good job. You could tell that they really loved what they were doing and wanted to do it right, and gave their characters, as much as they possibly could. So I'm going with show David, you're the winner. Nina. I think a lot of people know that Nina was not my favorite character in season 1 at all, but she made a huge turnaround in season 2. Really enjoyed the Nina character. She, again, was kind of a side character, not super important. And actually, anytime that she was like going after Matthias, you know, going to visit him in the prison, I was kind of like, let's get past this or get him out of there. Like, let's have the situation be something different. It didn't interest me that much. But her as a member of the crew was great. I loved it. I thought she was a spectacular addition. And in the book, I really enjoyed all of her sections. I thought that she was engaging and funny and smart, and she had all kinds of interesting things happening with her, especially in Crooked Kingdom, where actually it was both, but it was the end of Six of Crows and throughout Crooked Kingdom. She did the most with the magic system. Through that character, we were seeing an exploration of it. But we also had her thinking about the politics between Fjerda and Ravka a lot, and about the way that religion has sort of influenced Matthias, and how she wants to be able to fit in his life, and, you know, I just really liked the Nina in the book. I mean, she was great. So I'm gonna say Nina in the book is for the win, and in the show, season 2, Nina, you're okay there too. Matthias. Now, Matthias was a great character in the books. I enjoyed all of him. I really did. I didn't think that I would after the show. I thought he was a complete waste of time in the show, but in the books, he's great. And spoiler alert, he dies at the end. I was stunned. I was a little disappointed that he dies, because his character went through the biggest change out of the entire Six of Crows group. He was like a different person by the end of it. And so that made him, to me, the most engaging, not the most, but one of the most engaging characters, just on a character basis alone. I liked seeing the slow changes that he was going through, to the point that we got, to the extent that we finally got a Matthias who was coming to terms with what the reality is of the Grisha and how that might fit in with his faith, as opposed to being against his faith. I really liked that. Kaz. Okay, so Kaz, this is a tough one. No, actually it's not. Book Kaz wins, and this is because in the show, it's really hard to portray the internal dialogue and the thought process. Well, not really internal dialogue, but the way he thinks and feels is really important in the tension created. It's an internal tension, and he's almost constantly fighting himself through everything that he is doing. And although I think that the actor did a spectacular job trying to portray that on screen, so much of what was really there was impossible, I think, to bring out on the screen, that it was lost. So I'm gonna say Book Kaz for the win. And I really enjoyed this character. I do wish he went through more change. I wish that the Kaz that we had at the end had come further. He came pretty far, but it was kind of like implied that the next step would be, you know, her day job is going out and hunting the slavers, and he runs, you know, the New Crows Club, and she comes home to him, and their relationship is able to continue in this way. I almost wanted to see that happen a little bit sooner, like the gloves needed to come off sooner. and I know that I mean that not as a pun, but literally his gloves should have come off sooner, and we should have seen a little bit more instead of it being like really right at the end like that. So Book Kaz for the win. Inej was, I think, my favorite character in season 1. I think she was the coolest. I really wanted to see a lot going on with her. And then in season 2, a lot of the things that I liked about her, they kind of dropped. So she had 2 things really going for her that I liked. And the first was she was conflicted about killing. She didn't want to kill. It was against her faith. It was like the thing she was determined not to do. It was a huge conflict between her and Kaz, because he needed her to be willing to kill. And by, I think, like a couple episodes in, she had killed a few people. So the first time it happened, I think, at the Little Palace, it was never a problem again, really. That was it. So she was over it. Instead of this thing that she has to do and she regrets doing it. I would have liked to have seen her reluctantly killing, but then after the first one, she just does it. That, however, was not a thing at all in the books. She was already a killer from the beginning in the books, so we didn't see as much change happening in that respect. And then, again, in season 1 in the show, she was very much looking for her family, like this was a constant thing on her mind. And I don't feel like that was kept up through season 2. It's almost like they forgot that, or they were just gonna bring it up when they needed to. And if this is something that she's constantly working towards, I can get my freedom and then I can go find my family, I would just like to see more evidence of that along the way. Like, just remind the audience that it's there so that we feel that pain that she has of not knowing what has become of them. And in the books, we got that a lot. We got a lot of her thinking about her family and wondering where they are and if she could ever tell them everything that she'd been through, because now in the show, they didn't really go into it, but I mean, in the book, she was forced into prostitution. She was essentially a sex slave at the menagerie, and that was a big thing for her because she knew that her she's like, what, can I tell them about that? Like, I had to switch my brain off so that I wouldn't, I would think of myself as not being myself while I was being, abused. And it just would have been nice to have seen some of this conflict about she wants to find her family, and she's also conflicted about if she's the same person anymore and all that. I would like to have seen more of that. I'm not going to go too much more into it, but you get the idea. So I would say Book and Nej wins, with the exception of I would have liked to have seen some more development on her part, like a bigger arc. It was a very small arc across 2 whole books, and I just think we could have done a little bit more. Now, maybe like what they tried to do in the series, which is she has an aversion to killing in the beginning, but we see her coming to terms with, I need to do this for my job and I'm only killing bad guys to defend my friends. Jesper. I really liked the Jesper character. So this is a tough one for me. I thought that the actor who played Jesper did a fantastic job. I think that he's actually one of the most talented actors in the show so far. Actually, the guy who played Kirigan, I know that he's a big actor and he's 10 years older than everybody else from what I understand. He did what he could with the Kirigan character, and he did it as best as I think can be done. But the actor who plays Jesper was fantastic. He has really subtle, personal, deep feeling moments, and then he's also got the big flashy, with the gleam in his eye and the glint on his teeth kind of thing going on. I like this. I like that he's got this range. So I enjoyed the portrayal of Jesper in the series so much, or in the TV series so much, and I wish that they had more of the stuff that was in the book in the show with him. So in the show, that dream that he has where it's the hallucination when they're at Oval's house and he sees his mother and they talk, and she kind of tells the story of his past right there while they're hanging out. And it was a very sweet scene. But in the book, it's not told this way, it is played out. So we relive his these childhood moments with him, seeing his mother leave and not realizing that would be, she's gonna go off and help this sick kid. She's never coming back. And I really liked all of that. I thought it was great. I think that it might have taken a lot more screen time than they were planning on using for the crows in the show. And so that's probably why they didn't do it. But I would have to say, Jesper, if I could keep my visual animation of you in the book, which I don't know why I didn't. It was hard for me to imagine Jesper in the show that we saw in the show in the book. Like I see them as 2 different people, but I still enjoyed both of them. So that's the end of the Jesper story. I couldn't tell you which one I liked better. Wylan in the book was fantastic. I really enjoyed him. He is the naive, raised by his father, who was a very wealthy merchant. Everything was kind of handed to him, but he's so aware of this. He knows what he is and is aware of his vulnerabilities and goes out there and tries not to be the vulnerable one, but, doesn't really have what it takes to do that. I liked the Wylan character in the books so much, and I thought that they got a great little actor for him in the show. I think that they just neglected to give us anything about him. He was just kind of a stagnant character through most of the show. I wish they did more with him. I wish they had more growth and we saw some stuff coming out of him. But I also understand that, you know what, we've had Jesper around for so long, so that when the two of them are on screen together, who are we going to focus more on? Who do we need to like give more history on? It should be Jesper. So I'm hoping that in season 3, maybe they'll do more with the Wylan character. But yeah, he's got a great story. I really enjoyed all of his chapters. I was so engaged, I think, because this is a tool that writers will use in order to introduce a world to the readers, is having one of the perspectives be a new character. You know, have, let's say that you've got a magic school, right? Okay, the setting is magic school. Well, you're not gonna start with a senior who's been there for 6 years and they know all the magic and everything, because the readers are gonna be like, I don't understand what they're talking about, you know? And then what you do is you take a freshman, somebody who's new or somebody who's never been to this school before, and follow this character around for a little bit. It doesn't have to be POV. Maybe let's say you've got the senior has to take on the freshman as like a, you know, oh, it's my job to show you around. You have that scene or you have that relationship happen in order to introduce the reader to the setting. Now it's a commonly used tool. I think that it's sometimes overused, and I think it's sometimes obvious when it is just being a tool. The trick to do is to make that character really important to the main plot in some way. Make that new character somebody who you can't do without because of the rest of the story. So anyway, let's get back to this. Wylan was that character. He was the one who we got to be introduced to the crows and how they run things through his eyes. Because we didn't know how it was done. We didn't know what certain terms were. We didn't know why people say things like no mourners, no funerals. Why did they say that? You know, and it was Wylan who we got that information through, because he was the one who didn't understand and wanted to know why. Okay, we spent a lot on that question. I'm gonna go ahead and quickly go through the next couple questions in there. What was your favorite scene or top 5 scenes in the show? So I'm just gonna quickly out like this. Okay, so I picked 6. And honestly, these were just me sitting there kind of thinking off the top of my head. I would have to screen through it and watch it to really get the good ones. And is this for the show? Yes, in the show. Okay. I like the mini heist that the crows go on in episode, I don't remember what episode, it's like 2 or 3. It's early on in season 1, and they have to go and get that map of the little palace. I liked that, even though I felt like they got out of it really easily. I still was engaged. I liked that we saw what the plan was, we watched it unfold and go wrong, and then they had to get out of it. That was fun. I liked them kidnapping Alina, because we finally got to see the two storylines come together. That was a big deal for me. I was going, how are they going to put these two together? So, you know, you spent all of season 1, or most of it anyway, waiting for these paths to cross, and then they finally do. So that was something I had been waiting for, and I was happy to see it play out. But at the same time, I was also disappointed that it was like, oh, we're together and now we're apart. Like, you almost didn't need the crows at all for this. You really didn't. You didn't need them at all, obviously, because the books in Shadow and Bone, there are no crows, so you didn't really need them. But even then, I still was happy to see them come together, and I wished that they had interacted more. I'm glad they did in future. But at the same time, apart from Inej, their storylines did not cross a whole lot, and that was a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, what are you gonna do? Okay, next scenes. I really enjoyed the dialogue in the Oval episode. That's in season 2. It's the one where they are gonna go steal the sword Neshenyer. I liked the marketplace conversation, especially with Jesper and Wylan, and then you had what's his name, the Tolia, like trying to help Jesper. I thought that the dialogue in this whole episode was so good that it's worth studying to kind of, if you're a writer, help you figure out what works about making dialogue really engaging and worthy of being in the story in the first place, because you have to learn something through it. It can't just be 2 characters passing the time or talking about, you know, the state of affairs. Let's see. Then we got when Kirigan saves Alina with the cut. That's just a show thing. I thought that it was even though it was dramatic and, slow motion, and he comes in, it's exactly how I would want the mysterious Dark Lord, who we also find attractive. I would want him to be introduced like this. He does something super cool, jumping off the horse. He's got this big, dark, shadowy cloud, and then it's super brutal, cutting the Fjerdan in half, and the blood gets all over Alina's face, and my sister's like, I actually really like that it even got in your mouth. It's just so gross. I'm like, yes, I liked that a lot. I like that they went as far as to make it brutal like it was in the book. So well done there, and visually it was just very nice. And let's see, I liked when Kirigan was surprised at Alina, and I'm glad that they brought that moment up again in the finale of second season, where one of Kirigan's thoughts, when he says, I thought I had control of this, I thought that I might have something, worth saving or something like that. And the scene that he thinks of is the one where in season 1, before Alina knew he was a bad guy, kisses him first. And he's surprised by it, and almost surprised that he liked it so much or something. And now that's not the way that it played out in the book at all. Alina kisses him, or he kisses her, and she can sense that he hates doing it. Now, what they did in the show was great, because I bought it. When I watched the show, I thought it seemed like he was genuinely happy that she had kissed him. Like, he genuinely was surprised, even though he's 100 or whatever years old, and it's so gross. So for him to have been like, that was a genuine moment for him, I was like, yes, they played that right, and I liked it. I thought it was good, and it was an excellent scene for them to bring up at the end with the Kirigan character having, his regrets. Another note that I want to add about scenes, and because I've done 5, but now I really liked, I just have to say this, in the show, anytime that there was a real location used that was really cool, I loved that. It grounded the story so well, the show visually, to have real locations. Nothing looked cheap or just built for the sake of being, okay, we need a town, let's build a town. It looked like they really found some places to film at. So I especially loved in season 1, the interiors of the little palace were cool. Actually, the exteriors were cool too. And then we had in season 2, Novia Zem, the dark wood interior of the library in Novia Zem, I thought was super cool. I mean, that was like, I want to go to that library. I'll bet it smells really good in there, first of all. But it was just, you can't replicate that without a huge, huge budget. So I'm glad that they decided, you know what, instead of us putting together something that won't be convincing, we're just going to find places and go there and film. That was a good choice. The inside of the spinning wheel was amazing. I thought that was so beautiful. I wanted to know, where is this place? I have to go there and see this. So, I wish more filmmakers, especially for science fiction and fantasy, would do this. Find places that really exist and dress them to fit your world. It will come out so well on screen. Please don't kid yourself into believing that you can build a set like Lord of the Rings and have it come across as believable. I don't know if people are aware of this, but I think it took a couple years for them to build Hobbiton. They literally had to grow algae and whatnot on the fences for, I think, a year before they filmed. So just don't, if you're not willing to put that kind of time and budget into your show, or you can't, don't. Just dress up a place that already exists. It will look great. Much better than you can do with, some plywood and carbon fiber, whatever bullshit. Okay, I got this question quite a few times, which is, what do I think of the deleted scenes? So there were 2 deleted scenes for season 2. One of them is Jesper and Wylan wake up in Jesper's apartment, and this is after everything is done. They've returned to Ketterdam, and Jesper decides to give a key to Wylan, and Wylan's like, oh, what's this? And it's the big gesture, like, I want to share my life with you, and so here's the first big step. You now have a key to my house. Like, you can come whenever you want. I don't care. This, for me, although it was really sweet, I liked seeing it played out, I don't feel like it was necessary for the story in this season. I think they should have waited for season 3 for this and made it part of the drama of the 2 characters, because I have a feeling, since they're already together now in Crooked Kingdom and Six of Crows, they're not together. They're at the end of Crooked Kingdom they are. So now we're starting out season 3 with the two of them already together. So how are we going to introduce new drama for them? Otherwise, they'll just be background characters. How sad would that be? You don't want that. So what we need to do is figure out some sort of a drama for them, and it has to be this interior drama. Now, we have not seen Wyland's history, so he's going to be the character who we get the revelations about, because Jesper is done. Unless they want to play out his childhood, but it would be something we already know. So we were told that his mother died because she went off to go and help some kid who was sick, and the only way that she could help him was to draw the sickness into herself, and then she died. She's explained that in the show, so there's no point in playing it out again. Then when we get to, we have an entire thing with Wyland, and he's actually a major player in especially Crooked Kingdom. His dad is basically the main villain of Crooked Kingdom. So what we would want is, actually in Six of Crows too, but you know what I mean. He's going to be the character who we are focusing on with the two of them. And I think a good way to start out this drama would be for Wyland to want to have a closer relationship with Jesper. Like, what are we? We're together, but there's still this barrier between us. I think it would be good for him to want more, but also be reluctant to ask that of Jesper. And maybe Jesper, not sure if that's what Wyland wants. Maybe feeling a little bit reluctant about offering it because he doubts himself. Like, what if I offer him more, but I'm not ready to give that. I'm not ready to do that. And then handing over the key could be a big step for them. I don't think it's a good thing to start the drama here, because then what you get is bickering lovers. They're going to be, they've already taken this big step without being ready for it. And that feels so dirty. And I don't mean dirty in any moral kind of sense or whatever. I just feel like I would like to see things play out in a more mature way with these characters, and I think a way to do that is to not have the key be handed over until they are both really ready for that. So that's what I would do for season 3 there. But anyway, that was my thoughts on the Wyland and Jesper scene, is that I liked it, but they should have saved it for later. Now, the other cut scene is Jesper and Inej, and it's their farewell, because Jesper is aware now that they've got their money, they've finished the job, it's the end of season 2, and it's right before Inej goes and talks to Kaz. Everybody knows Inej wants to take her winnings to go and find her parents at this point. So Jesper comes to say goodbye to Inej, or not really goodbye, but like, I know you're going to be leaving and I'm going to miss you, and he cries. Gosh, I love that scene. I really think they should have kept this one in. This is the one they should have kept in, because we didn't have her saying goodbye to Jesper in the show. It was Inej, Kaz, and Jesper in the beginning. They are a trio, and it was like she said goodbye to Kaz and it was terrible, but she didn't say goodbye to Jesper, just whatever, so long. That scene should have stayed in. I think it was a mistake for them to take it out. But I also could see why they took it out, because supposedly the very next scene is her and Kaz. And that would have maybe felt like, oh no, this goodbye scene and then this goodbye scene that's so bad. Maybe it would contrast poorly. Also, having 2 Inej scenes, one right after another, might not look so good. Well, they could have had the Jesper and Inej scene take place earlier in the story somewhere. Maybe when they know that they have won, but some of the other conversations haven't happened. And don't have her at the very end say, I'm off to go into the chapel to pray now. You don't need to do that. Just have them have this conversation while they're doing something. Maybe they're helping the injured or something. And the two of them are working on somebody together, and Jesper kind of brings this up. And then the two of them can have this really heartfelt moment where they realize the end of this means the end of our being together, because Inej is going to be leaving. So, but loved it. Really thought they should have kept it in the show. Okay, next comes from Falafel Films. I'd really love to hear your thoughts on the Six of Crows books. I think I've given a lot of them. They are vastly superior to the Shadow and Bone series. Shadow and Bone had this thing where the first book had a lot of amateurish mistakes, second book less so, third book less so, and then there was like a huge leap in quality moving into Six of Crows. So I feel like Six of Crows was so well crafted as a YA novel. It had great pacing with the character development, well, not development, but the character movement, I would say, and also the plot movement. So there was always something moving forward. As far as character development goes, I would say there were more things like character revelations. So rather than our characters going through a big change where their personality basically changes, although that did happen, we did see the growth. I'm not denying that that happened. I'm just saying it wasn't as much as having things revealed about their past or why they are the way that they are and why it's so hard for them to change, which is fine. That's an excellent way to intrigue an audience. Introduce a mystery and then slowly let it unfold. That's a great way to do it. And the writer did such a good job of this that she was always giving us just little nuggets of information. You know, usually a mystery would be introduced, and then at the end, or I would say a mystery would be introduced, and then we'd get information about that mystery, but then also another question. And this kept going throughout the entire novel so that you always wanted to know more. Anytime, you know, oh, this is a new perspective. Oh yeah, I want to know this thing about that character. So I just really enjoyed what she did in Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I think Crooked Kingdom especially was very good as far as pacing and character movement are concerned. It was great. Yeah, it was definitely YA though. So YA tends to build up the anticipation of a relationship and then end it when the relationship happens, and also tends not to show huge leaps and bounds in character development. So I'd say major differentiation between YA and YA fantasy and adult fantasy, well, any YA or adult book, I think, is you'll see less of that development in YA. They'll like reach a certain stage and kind of like not go beyond that. And adult will typically try to take them to the beyond. And the same thing is true with that's it. That's all really all. Yes, same thing. Oh, no. Same thing is true with the relationships. Also, everybody is always interested in everybody in YA, which can be a bit tiresome for somebody who's read it a bunch of times, which, you know, I'm one of those people. I've read them a bunch. I'm done with them. I've kind of graduated beyond that. I'm not saying I don't still enjoy it. I can enjoy it. I'm just more selective about it, and I'm less interested in seeking out books like this and trying to find them. Oh, Falafel Films was just gonna ask me about the 2 cut scenes. So I have a lot of people asking the same questions, and I'm not gonna answer them again if I've already answered them. Next person is Fatima Hey Ammer. The name is gonna be down there. Favorite book from the Grisha trilogy? That's a tough one. I would have to say the first one. The first one I think was so interesting a world to learn about for me that was the one that really gripped me. The second and third one, although they were improvements, you know, each one got better than the previous. It's interesting, but I was so fascinated by the world and how everything worked. The first one to me stands out the most, and that's just a personal favorite. That has nothing to do with my opinion as an editor, which one is better. I think that I happened to enjoy the first one the most. Okay, the next question that is asked here is some things that I would change from the books, or things that you think could have been done better another way. I did a lot of that throughout the series. If you go back and watch all my other videos, that's pretty much all I did was what I would do differently. I would have had Matthias in the show cut. Oh, is this just about the book? Oh, it is about the books. Okay, so stuff just about the books that I would change. So if we're gonna talk just about the Shadow and Bone books, I would have matured Alina, and I would have changed Mal. Mal should have been what he was in the show, more likable and noble, and you know, he tries to keep his stuff to himself until Alina corners him, and then it comes out that he does struggle with these things, but he's a more mature character that we want Alina to want to be with. And then Alina, since we're in her head, I would like to see that she grows out of some of her self-consciousness a little bit sooner. And it's okay to have, this imposter, isn't it called imposter syndrome? It's okay to have that be like a constant thread, but to have the same thing constantly be her concern is tiresome. And for books 1 and 2, it was basically that. But I'm glad that she didn't have it so much for the third book. So by the third book, she was more mature from there. So I would have matured up the characters in the Grisha verse. And I would also have changed, the rules of how an amplifier works did not make a whole lot of sense to me in either version. I think that they messed up a little bit. So in the book, Alina gets the third amplifier, with killing Mal. And first of all, she didn't have to fuse anything from him in order for it to work. So it was like, wasn't that a rule that was established? This was not explained very well. And something that I would complain about to the writer is you need to go back and set some rules and stick to them. Because if you don't, people are going to find these loopholes and they're going to nail you for it as sloppy world building. And it is sloppy, but she matured so much just between the two series is that I kind of chalk it up to, I think she would have fixed this. If she could go back and do it again, she would fix it. I don't know what she would do. I think I've mentioned a few things. Then, you go back to some of my, especially in the last episode, I think I explained how I would have done Alina and Mal differently. I would have had her realize that she doesn't need to take the bone sooner or something. I don't remember. Anyway. Then, what was another thing? I had more thing I wanted to mention. Oh yeah, so another big loophole, and it's not really a loophole so much as it was hard to understand why this was a thing, but in the book, Alina gets the third amplifier, and for a minute she's powerful, but then she feels all her power leave, and suddenly all the other Grisha have her power. That made no sense. So I would have liked to have had some build-up to why this should make sense, or I wouldn't have done that at all, because to me, the logic isn't there. Amplifiers, you have physical contact with an amplifier and it gives you more power. But if you get this third amplifier, suddenly everybody gets power. It made no sense to me. I think that needed to be spelled out a little bit better, why this is supposed to be what we should expect to happen. So when you have something like this happen, an unexpected thing, it can feel like Deus Ex Machina, which is God out of the machine or God from the machine. It means that you set up a system with rules, but then at the very end, when you want everyone to be surprised by what happens, you do that by having a miracle happen, something that makes no sense, like this machine couldn't have possibly done this. It had to have just been God, right? That's what happened here, is that I cannot go back, at least I don't believe I could go back and see the logic of how we should have known that, oh, this sort of thing is possible. Now, there were things like in Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom that I really enjoyed, like the Jurda Parem giving you sort of this expanded extension of your power. And if you are, if you're a tailor, like, so we have Nina, or a heart render, or whatever, your specialty is the human body, it kind of makes it even more so the human body. And that includes things like, I can change your thoughts now, or I can make you behave in certain ways because your brain is part of your body, so I can make that change. Or raising the dead, not really like they're alive, but animating the dead, and or like bone dust, things like this I really liked. But there was logic to it. I could see how it worked because it was connected to the human body. So I like that. I think that makes perfect sense. Crooked Kingdom, again, this is the writer matured and understood that this is how you have to do things. So the major changes mainly would be to the first book. And I think the last thing, as far as changes to the books are concerned, other than the things I've already mentioned, like making the characters go through more growth, I don't think I would have had Matthias die at the end. I'm not sure I understood why that has to happen, and I know a lot of people are going to go, well, that sometimes happens in life, people you don't expect to die. Well, this isn't one of those kinds of books. I really don't think that this is the type of book, even though, so in Shadow and Bone, I was hoping that Mal would die. Why? Because we were kind of building up to he needs to die. Like all the amplifiers have to die, so he should have died and been dead. then in this book, we weren't really seeing a build up to somebody must die, and especially not Matthias. It just wasn't really coming out there that he was the one that needs to die. And I'm not saying we had to have some sort of magic system that makes it so, oh, he has to be the one who goes, but you kind of want to prepare your audience for death. And I don't mean by making it obvious who's going to die, but by setting up certain things. And I guess we could go back and say, well, Nina so badly wanting her happily ever after with Matthias should have been the good setup for it. Right. But what was the purpose in having this Matthias character go through all of this change just for him to die at the end? Are we going to get another book now where Nina goes off into Fjerda and is able to change people's minds in Fjerda? Or is she going to do it? There was all kinds of things that I felt like I didn't think that killing off Matthias was necessary for these things to happen. And you kind of want to have a reason for why you do things, especially in fiction, because people will go back and say, did you just kill this person in order to kill somebody? And that's not very satisfying. Unfortunately, fiction is not real life, so you can't write it like real life. You have to give things purpose and meaning. Okay, so I've been asked also, what is my favorite point of view from 6 of Crows? And that's a tough one for me because I enjoyed all of them. I thought that they were all great. Especially in 6 of Crows, I loved being in Kaz's head and Inej's head. And then by the time we got to Crooked Kingdom, I was really enjoying being in Jesper's head and Wyland's head. And I enjoyed Matthias and Nina through both of them. Really enjoyed Nina actually in the book because she did all that cool stuff with the magic, and it was interesting to follow her with that. And Matthias, I liked the growth that he went through. It's very weird that I despised these characters so much in the series, in the TV series, especially in season 1, but I enjoyed them so much in the books. So it would be really difficult for me to pick which ones I liked the most. I would say by the end, and this does not mean overall I enjoyed them most, but by the time I got to the end of Crooked Kingdom, I was really enjoying being in Wyland's head a lot. I think probably because he was one of the key players in the drama that was happening with the villain, so I liked seeing that play out. And then I actually really liked being in Pekka's head at the end. I think that was a great way to end it, to have this mysterious moment with Inej coming in to like, I'm gonna get ya. And that was great. I loved that. My sister really enjoyed it too. She's like, make sure you bring up that scene. Yes, I'm going to, because that was very good. I liked that they ended with the villain and us seeing that Kaz has succeeded in instilling the fear and the suffering in him, that he can never go back. Well done there. But again, what are they going to do in the series now? I mean, Pekka's still alive and scheming, so I don't know, maybe they're going to try and do this whole sugar thing, which I won't give too much away, just too complicated to go into, but maybe they're going to try and do that. I don't know. This is an odd situation that they have left the story in at the end of season 2 in the Netflix series. Okay, I've been asked, what is my opinion on book-only characters? Are there any book-only characters? I think most of the important ones actually made it into the series, with the exception of Wyland's dad and his stepmother. But we haven't gotten to that point in the story yet, so hard for me to have an opinion on that. But I think I've talked a lot about the characters that in 6 of Crows. Okay, this is an interesting question. Which characters or character relationships do you associate with other characters from other TV shows, movies, or books? I honestly did not associate any with anything else, only because I get really hyper-focused on whatever it is that I'm studying. But somebody in the comments said that Inej and Kaz's relationship follows Pride and Prejudice beat for beat. And I did not see that at all in the show. I think in the book, yes, but they kind of saved the big moments for the very, very end, the flip moment. So the part where Darcy, Inej finds out that Darcy saved her sister is kind of Kaz revealing that I've bought you a boat and I found your parents and look, no gloves. that all happens at the end, like all together. Whereas in, Pride and Prejudice, it's kind of spread out. So you see this, it feels like a gradual change. Well, there wasn't really an opportunity for that to happen in the book because they had the heist. And then when the heist is over, then you better hurry up through the closing bits. So I did not see a whole, I guess, you'd have like a Romeo and Juliet with Nina and Matthias. Not really though. Or I guess, what was it? Not West Side Story. Oh, come on. I can't remember the name of it, but there's so many of these like, lovers from different sides of the war story. And if I was going to try to compare them, it's hard. The ones I can think of are classics. And how do you compare something that's a YA novel that just came out a few years ago to a classic that has stood the test of time for decades or possibly even hundreds of years? It just can't be done. I mean, we know which one's the winner. But I still enjoyed all of them. I thought that they were all good. I do not like, but this is just a personal preference, I do not like everybody pairing up with everybody in a story, which is another thing why YA kind of gets me, gets to me, is that everybody's got to have somebody at the end. Not that I want characters to be alone, but that it feels predictable. You get to the end, you're like, okay, they're all going to be together, and you also can tell who the one true pair is, like, who it's going to be. So, like Inej in the show, getting that little look from Tolia at the end, I know that it's not gonna pan out. It's gonna be Inej and Kaz at the end, because whoever you lock eyes with first, that's the one. What would be really great is if they had a YA story where the heroine thinks it's going to be this person, and that it's true love, and or the hero or heroine, whatever. Everybody thinks it's going to be this. But then there's like the friend on the side, and we don't really see how great that friend on the side is until much later in the story, and then it slowly graduates over there, or something. Like, let it be the other, like, and this is so stupid, but I think that it would have been much healthier for Inej to be with Tolia, and then I'm thinking of Twilight. Like, she should have gone with the wolf guy. Then she wouldn't have had to completely change herself in order to be able to be with somebody. So you get the idea, though. It would just be nice to see that flip happen. But young adult readers tend to be drawn more to that there is the one true person, and it must be that person that you met first and you locked eyes with. You just know it's them, because you can never have a change in feelings. It's a very naive thing to believe that that the first person you fall in love with is the one. And that's something that as you grow older, you come to realize. And I'm not saying that makes YA bad. I'm just saying it makes it something that I get tired of reading, because I want what happens next. And you don't usually see that in YA, because it's always, will I get with the first person I've fallen in love with? And then it's, yes, you will, the end. Okay, my opinion on all the ships. I think I've given that so far. I like show Alina and Mal. I like, I actually even liked show Alina and the Darkling in season 1 until, we got that he was a bad guy. Then in the show, I like, really this question is about Six of Crows, I think. I liked all of the pairs. I just was I enjoyed them. I did. I think they're great. I think everybody was telling me that Nina and Matthias are like toxic, but the thing is we saw them grow out of that. We saw them, they were the best, most developed couple by the end. Like, they started out in such an abrasive place and ended up so well together that I was like, what the heck? Then he dies. So it was like, you can never have it be good because it's gonna end. I enjoyed all of them. I wish that we had more between Kaz and Inej, more development there. But I liked them all. And in the books, the book too, same. I would say in the books though, no Alina. Alina should not have been with either the Darkling or with Mal. I would actually have wanted her to be with the Darkling more, at least in the first book. But I wasn't thrilled with her choice in Man. Okay, this question actually has a second part I didn't notice. Your opinion on all the ships and if they're just there for the sake of romance. I think that's obvious. It's that in YA, romance especially, and this is why it's got the romantic tension. A lot of YA means everybody has to end up with somebody. It's just kind of a rule that you follow. So my opinion is that, was it there just for the sake of romance? Yes, but that's because that's how you do this. Like that, you kind of have to do it this way. Nobody can end up alone. We all want somebody to end up with somebody, even though a huge percentage of people in the world do end up alone. You just never think that it's gonna be you. Reading with Rebecca Nicole, who is one of my patrons, and she has her own channel. I'm gonna put the link up there or in the description, because I think you can only put one up there for some reason. I don't know. She asks, who is your favorite Six of Crows character and why is it Nina? Okay, yeah, so I forgot she asked this question. Yeah. I think we all know how I felt about Nina in season 1 especially, but she grew to be so cool in season 2. So she actually became one of my favorites. And honestly, I want to have I do have a love of food like she does. I always wanted to eat whatever she was eating because it always seemed delicious. So let's see, my favorite. I think I've already said this, but I think Wylan was really good, and in the show I really loved Inej, but I liked her less in season 2. Gosh, I wish I could be less wishy-washy about it, but it's hard. It's hard to do that. I think Kaz was super interesting, but I wanted him to go through more change, or more of a, let's see the progress happening from an earlier point, and we didn't really get huge amounts of that change until the end. So I think it should have been spread out just a smidge more. Do I think it was a good idea to combine the Six of Crows and Shadow and Bone storylines for the show? Okay, so I had this great idea for how they should have done this, because I wanted more from each of these storylines. I felt like they had to condense, and oddly enough, they didn't condense it to the things that really would have been useful in some cases. But what they should have done is had the Grishaverse, okay? So instead of Shadow and Bone, we just call it the Grishaverse. Don't cross these storylines. They were crossed in a needless way. You didn't need to do that. But if you had done this, if you had said the Grishaverse, and at the same time you have 4 episodes of just the Six of Crows characters and 4 episodes of just the Shadow and Bone characters, you could select, what do you want to do? You want to go with the Crows, or do you want to go with Shadow and Bone? If I watched just one of those, I probably would have been intrigued enough to check out the other one too. That's what they should have done. But don't cross them over needlessly like this, because it did feel needless. Honestly, they did a much better job with them in season 2, making it the Crows who go after the sword, and then Inej coming back and being the one who wields it. But at the same time, it was did you need to do that? Not really. This would also have helped, I think, Netflix decide where to allocate their funds for seasons, because they would have seen that people are really enjoying the Six of Crows gang. And so they could have put a lot more budget into that and a lot more effort into okay, we know they really like this, so we're gonna make sure it's good. Or they could also have said, you know what? People really like this one. We need to juice up Shadow and Bone a little bit more. So let's put more effort into the second one and see if we can make that even better. I think that would have helped a lot in deciding where their money goes and where their effort goes. But when you mix them together, it's tough. I mean, I know that they can see what parts of a show people are skipping through. I just don't think people skip through shows on Netflix the way that they do on YouTube. I can look at my analytics and see what parts of my videos people skip through. I don't always pay attention to them when I should, but I can see when that happens. And so when I do see where that happens, I go, okay, maybe I shouldn't ramble so much. What are your predictions for season 3 if it is produced? I think I've answered some of that one already. I don't know where the hell they're going with Alina, making her into the bad guy. I mentioned this in one of my comments, and I know this is going to happen, and I please don't do this. I think Alina is going to get more and more power mad, and she's gonna go full on nuclear. And in that moment, when her power is just swirling all around her, Mal is gonna fight his way through the radioactive dark cloud to embrace her, and then she'll turn good. Please don't do this, Netflix. That would be a very, very bad decision. But I'll tell you what, having her go power mad in a season 3, and then him pushing his way through it, and then the embrace is what calms her down, they better build up to it very well. That's all I'm gonna say on this. In my opinion, should a season 3 be made, or should they scrap the Alina storyline and just make a Six of Crows spin-off show? They should make a season 3. I think that it would be a good idea to turn the crows into the main characters, unless they're going to, I don't know what is in King of Scars, but if that's a really great story, then they should make that the main focus of the Alina storyline. But then again, it's like the shift in focus is no longer Alina. At least it shouldn't be, unless they're going to turn her into the potential supervillain, which is really weird because she's the savior, she's the saint. But whatever, okay, we'll see where they go with this. I think that they should do a season 3 because they did such a good job with season 1, most of it. Season 2, they messed up, but I think they can fix a lot of things, or I don't think that it's going to be better. It's going to be really hard to go from great season 1 to mediocre season 2 to a great season 3. I don't think that's going to happen. But they could at least make it a little better than season 2, right? You're gonna do that by saying the Alina story is done. It has to be done. And the new focus is the crows going to the ice court and getting, but I can never say the names, the guy who turns out to be the son of the guy. That will be the big story there. And if they're going to do anything with the Alina thing, it's going to have to be with Nikolai and whatever his story is, which I have no idea what his story is. Is he even in the palace most of the time? I don't know. As for a Six of Crows spin-off show, I think that's the word, is that they're going to do a Six of Crows spin-off show. That'd be just weird. There's like, we're just going to forget Alina, even though we showed that she's turning into a bad guy and that Nikolai has got a monster inside of him. We're just gonna forget about that. It'd be a little weird. I think that they're gonna have to do a season 3 and have those guys in there. And so, Rebecca, the last 2 questions that you asked, who are my favorite characters in the books, and are they different in the show? I definitely have answered that already. Cecilia Kimura asks, do you prefer the characters from the book or from the show? I think I've already answered that. Including both the Shadow and Bone trilogy and the Six of Crows, do you think that it was a mistake mixing both stories considering what you have read so far? So I've read all of it. I think that they should have done what my sister and I thought would be a good idea, having the Grishaverse with fewer episodes but solely focused on their separate storylines. That would have been the best option. I think people would have watched both of them. They would have come out with their favorites, which is fine, but you wouldn't have these mixed feelings. Like, I think that people would have really enjoyed the Six of Crows and then had sour feelings about what they did with Shadow and Bone. But when you mix them together, it's like, I like Shadow and Bone, but only the crows part. That's tough. It's hard. You can't really give the show a great rating if you didn't enjoy parts of it. So separate them, but you can have both of them. What is your favorite character from the show and favorite Six of Crows character from the book? Already kind of did that. I mean, I guess it's hard for me to pick a favorite. I don't know if I've answered that. Okay, actually I haven't. So the show, season 1, I really enjoyed. I enjoyed Kaz and Inej and Jasper so much in the first season. Really, the crows are such good characters. They win in both season 1 and 2. And in season 2, the surprise favorite for me was Tolia, who got no development whatsoever. I just thought he was good. Also, Nikolai's really good. I think they did a great job with Nikolai, except them constantly trying to be like, is he a good guy? Now, I know this is a weird thing, but I tend to gravitate towards the good guy character. Morally gray characters, I can enjoy reading, but when someone asks me who is a favorite, I'm typically going to pick the Paragon because I find it interesting to see a character who is good living in a gray or dark world and trying to see how do they deal with that. That to me is so interesting because I think we all aspire to be good. And when we see characters who are doing things that are bad, we can go, oh, I have, flaws and I can relate, but we're not all acting on those bad impulses all the time. I think that we aspire to be good. That's what we want to be. So I like seeing other characters struggle, but really come out good in the end too. So anyway, that's a whole discussion that I'm not going to have right now. I think we all have to have a moment of silence though for characters who were introduced and then disappeared, such as our first cute button winner. Whatever happened to Fedyor? He just vanished. And Ivan, did he die? I mean, in the book we know he died, but in the show, did he die? I guess he did. 'Cause he ain't around no more? I mean, what happened? Like, most of the bad guys in the first season are gone. What happened to Marie? Was it Marie or Maria? Alina never acknowledged that she died. She just died and was gone. And we're like, oh, wasn't your, no relation to you, Alina, even though she died wearing your face pretending to be you. And somebody thought that she was you and killed her. Like, that was a mistake. I really think that they messed this one up. They should have had that one come back because it was her best buddy and just no mention of her dying. Oh well. Okay, we've got some other questions that I've already answered. So what was your favorite Six of Crows character from the show and from the book? Do you think the writers were able to capture the essence of these characters on screen? Matthias, no. Nina? Yeah, towards the end. Jesper? Yeah, but he definitely was more in the book. Wylan? They didn't have the opportunity, I think, to show him more, but I think they got him right. Inej, again, this is one of those things where like there was so much more in the book that made them really interesting, and I just don't know how you could have portrayed that so well on screen. I think Kaz, a lot of his stuff was internal, and I mean, a lot of the character tension was internal, so gosh, I don't know. It's a tough one. This is a tough question. But yeah, as far as did they capture them, I think they captured the bones. They got most of it right. I think that these characters were pretty much exactly how I would imagine them, although Wylan looks completely different, but you get the idea. What is my favorite point of view in Six of Crows? I think I've already answered that one. I've heard people say that the fact that in the books the Six of Crow characters range from 16 to 18, that the scenes threw them off. I do agree that the characters definitely don't act their age, and it's a reach to put those ages in, but it didn't really throw me off. I think it is just because most of the time I forgot about it. How do you feel? Yeah, they were way too young in the books. So I'm gonna be putting out a video soon about Ender's Game, which is a book that has the main character is 6 years old, and all the characters are kids, but they do not act like that. But this is because they are bred to be intelligent and tactical and think far more maturely. And the adults who are in charge of these kids even say, I forget that they're kids sometimes because they don't talk like them, they don't act like them. That's a point in the story, is that these are not your average children. In this series, I don't think that was the case. I don't think that these were teenagers who were not your average teenager. So I have worked with kids I'm not going to go into what my past jobs were, but I have worked with kids who have come from backgrounds of abuse and neglect and lived on the streets and things like this. And they're still children. It doesn't come out like this self-awareness, this kind of thought process and maturity and the stage of emotional development. It's not here. So I did not for 1 second believe that these were 16 to 18-year-olds. In my head, they were the same age as they appear to be in the show, so in their early 20s. And that's fine. I just think it was a way to get young readers interested in reading about characters. So I think that young adults, teenagers, might not have picked these books up if they thought, that the characters are like in their 20s. They like to imagine themselves being able to be in this situation. And maybe that's why actually this appeals so much. So I know that Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom especially are very popular in the young adult crowd, but maybe it's because the writer did not dumb down the mentality and the personality of the characters, even though she sold them as 16, 17, and 18-year-olds. Like, they're 16, 17, and 18, but they had clearly the thoughts and the awareness of and maturity of much older characters, like 10 years older almost. So you had in their mid-early 20s. That's what I was imagining with these characters. I mean, at least Kaz should have been much older, but you get what I'm saying here. And the young people still enjoyed it. They were able to rise to understand that these are the kind of things I want to read about. And this is probably also why a bunch of adults really enjoy these series as well, because it's not written like 15, 16, 17-year-olds. They are written much more maturely. So I like this. And actually it made me change. So I've been writing some stories, and I've got one where I have a very young protagonist, and I decided, I'm going to age him up. doesn't need to be this young. And because I want it to be believable for this age kind of a character. So that's my thoughts there. What's your favorite scene from the show? I think I've already mentioned that. And do you have a favorite in the Shadow and Bone trilogy? Do you mean a favorite scene? And a favorite in Six of Crows? Like as a favorite book scene? No, I really struggle to nail down like favorite moments. I think Nina raising the dead was pretty cool. I liked that. I also liked, I know Crooked Kingdom is on my head right now because I just finished it, and I raced through it as fast as I possibly could. I would say that, yeah, and any of the scenes with Wylan where we were learning about his past, I was super interested in learning about. And I think it might also be partially because I didn't get any of that in the show. We didn't get any background on Wylan in the show, so I was super fascinated to learn about him. So, Wylan stuff. Oh, and as far as Shadow and Bone, I think I liked when she met the Firebird. Thought that was pretty neat. That was definitely a good scene. Earlier books, that's a tough one. I mean, for me, the Shadow and Bone series had several weaknesses, so that I was focusing more on what are the weaknesses that I would have changed and made better. The positive stuff, I saw so many improvements in the show that when I think of positive things, I think mainly of what they did in the show that was better than what they did in the book. But there were obviously things in the books that were better than in the show. So I like the ending of the show, or of the books. I think that's a good end. It's a remarkably mature ending, that they lose their powers, but then the two of them decide they're going to not start an orphanage, but they're going to help orphans so that they don't become like they were. I think that was a really cool little ending for them to do, for Lee Bardugo to do with those two characters. And how do you feel about the pacing of the books, Six of Crows and Shadow and Bone? Also, how do you feel about the relationship developments? I've definitely talked about both of these things. Pacing in Six of Crows, and especially Crooked Kingdom, vastly superior to Shadow and Bone. She nailed the internal progress and the progress of the plot in the Crows storyline through both books, as opposed to Shadow and Bone. There was a lot of need for improvement in order to keep that engaging. I have to admit, there were parts in Shadow and Bone that I was slogging through. A lot of parts where they were underground and they were just kind of traveling. I'm like, oh my gosh, can't we please get out of here? And things that I thought were going to take longer to do, and I was like, that's it? It's over? Like, for instance, finding the sea whip so early in the second book. And then in the show, like, what was it, the second or third episode they found it? I think that was a shock to me and happened way too soon, I think. I think it would have been much more interesting to have it be the pursuit of this creature is the entirety of the book. But, you know, it kind of also broke a trope there, which, I don't know. I just don't know how successful it was. Pacing of the show, I think just go watch my videos because there were ones that I clearly enjoyed and others that I did not. And the ones that I did not, I think a lot of it had to do with repetition. So like the beginning of season 2, I was pretty bored with the Crows, especially Inej and Kaz, because the same problems kept coming up and not being moved past. Like, oh, we're gonna do this again, where I try to send you away and you keep coming back, and like, well, I'm back for now. Like, over and over again, it gets old. And yeah, this person says that episode, I think it was 7 that comment was left on, was really hard to watch. Yep, it was. Okay, this next one comes from A Curious Corvid. It says, with the conclusion of season 2 and the shift in quality towards the finale, do you believe the show can rectify some of the narrative mishaps if it were brought back for a 3rd season? I think I did explain this already. I think season 1 was pretty good. Season 2 was not good. Season 3 is never going to be as good as season 1 because you have had this step down. Because it's a very weak foundation. So whatever they do in the 3rd season is going to have to build off of these things that didn't really make sense or weren't done very well in the 2nd season. So it's not really going to be as satisfying in the 3rd season. So no matter what they do, they could put their all-star stellar writers on season 3. It's gonna feel weak. So because it had a weak buildup. So I don't have a lot of confidence in season 3 being better, unless King of Scars is super good and they just make that the central focus, like we're starting fresh with Nikolai. But we're not starting fresh with Nikolai. I don't know what they do with him in King of Scars, so I don't think it's gonna be great. I don't have a lot of hope for it. When you go from great, or at least very good, to very disappointing and kind of frustrating, and honestly, it was major disappointment by the end. It's not gonna come back up. It can't happen. I challenge you to find me the series that did that without changing to completely different perspectives. Okay, this one comes from Liz Feels Funny. Okay. I wish they made Kirigan more sociopathic like he is in the books. Me too. Just commit him to being manipulative as hell. You can still sympathize and see how much of a monster he is. Hard agree. And I'm just gonna reference my previous comments about Kirigan and how I think he should have just been evil, and then at the very end he has his vulnerable moment and we go, oh, was that really hiding underneath all of that wickedness? He should have been way more proactive in the latter half of at least in the show. In the book, he was much better. They should have had him like in the book. Elena Duncan says, who did you think was the most complex or intriguing character? I think Kaz was the most intriguing for sure. I actually was really intrigued by Wylan. I wanted to know exactly what was up between him and his dad because it didn't make much sense to me, and boy, did it go somewhere good. I was really happy with where they went with Wylan, and this is books. Kaz, maybe because I figured out his backstory. Well, we got his backstory at the end of season 1, so there wasn't this big reveal for me reading about him in the books. But he was still so intriguing. I wanted to know so much more about him. Okay. Why did they switch the characterization of characters like Alina and the Darkling from the books? So I'm not 100% sure what you mean by this question, but I think what you mean is why did they change the personalities? I think it was to make them more intriguing. So they made Alina more mature, and for the Darkling they made him more, or they tried to and failed, make him more sympathetic. I think because with the Darkling especially, they were trying to build up like, oh, maybe he'll turn out to be a good guy in the end. And I know that there were some people who shipped the Darkling and Alina from the books. I could see that. I can totally see why they did that, because Mal was not a great first option. So I get why they wanted Alina and Kirigan. And maybe what they were hoping to do was continue that in the show, and they just executed it so poorly. Like they didn't understand how to do that they, making him go from one extreme to the other, and then in the end he's dead and he wasn't proactive. I think they did it because they wanted people to continue shipping Alina and Kirigan, which was not going to happen. And as far as making Alina different, I just think it was a good idea because she was obnoxious as hell in the books, in the first 2 especially. She was much better in the 3rd. There was a few things that actually the book, though, did do better, and like making her more of a military leader than she was in the show. So again, hard to say. I don't agree with everything that the show did with these characters. As a matter of fact, I disagree with a lot that they did. But I don't think that what the book did was much better. So, do you think the villain was better developed in the books or the show? I think I just answered that. As far as the Crooked Kingdom villains, we haven't seen them all. So, I have yet to find out. Which characters would you have liked more development on? I think this is also something that I've talked about before. And it's not so much that I would have liked more, because I think that they're trying to save some things for the 3rd season, if they get one, which I'm fine with that. Like Wylan, I'm sure his development's going to happen in the 3rd season. I would have liked more of Jesper's backstory, seeing it played out instead. Like we did it with Kaz. We saw flashbacks of Kaz's past. We should have done the same thing with Jesper's character, because just having his mother tell us stuff is not nearly as effective as us seeing it play out. And then Inej. I would have liked to have seen, although, I get it's gonna be hard to show some stuff because you have to keep this PG-13, but there was some really interesting stuff going on with Inej. Again, most of it was gonna be in her head where we were seeing the things we really need to know. But yeah, I just would have liked more with Inej. Like Kaz, I get it. He's, the guy that everybody really likes. And I think this is a story that has mostly female fans, so they would be more interested in seeing stuff about Kaz than they would about Inej. But I would have liked stuff about Inej. Again, I gravitate towards adult fantasy. And if this was more of an adult fantasy, they would have played evenly with this, unless Kaz really was the main character and Inej was some side girl. Anyway, why did they decide for Alina to just go full on hating the Darkling? So I thought about this a while, and I actually think this was kind of a realistic thing, where in the show they really talked about this, how Alina felt like she kind of owed the Darkling. It's in that conversation where she's talking to Baghra, and she says that he is the reason why I have these powers. Like, he discovered it, and he's the reason why he nurtured my position. I am in this position because he brought me to it. So I kind of feel like I owe him. So maybe they had her hating it because of what Baghra says. Like, yes, he gave this to you, but he's also betrayed you, and he has used you and manipulated you. And it's sort of like her way of rejecting him, because remember, she feels like she owes him, but for her to fully reject him, what she's got to do is hate him. So I'm not saying like it's a forced hate, but I'm saying like it makes sense that she would fall into that hatred of him so easily because she feels betrayed. Betrayal is like one of the worst feelings ever, because it's like, I trusted you and I feel like I owe you something, but turns out it was all for you in the end. So I like that it turned into hatred, and that seems like a very realistic reaction. What I think they should have done in the show, however, is play up in season 1 just how much the Darkling helped her. I would have liked to have seen more of him interacting with her, encouraging her at, that she is going to be amazing. I know we had him say, you and I are going to do amazing things together, but I would like to have seen him trying to bolster her confidence more. And we got some of it, but if we saw more of it, it would make this moment feel even more painful, because yeah, she did feel like she, her confidence and her position as a leader. Also to see her develop into that leader. Let's see her more meek in the beginning and then really shine when she does feel confident in herself. Shine. But you get what I mean. And then we can see why the anger might be there. I think it would make a little bit more sense logically. It would stand out more as to why that's happening. Also, we've got like a million different perspectives in this show, so it's hard to keep track of what's going on with who. Or how many details are in these stories, so I can see why that happened, but I think that's why they did it. Do you think it would have been better to not include the crows and instead get more development with the Shadow and Bone characters? I think I've answered that one too. One series, 2 separate branches. That's what they should have done. Then they could have developed a lot more, because they wouldn't have to take time away from one storyline and then be like, oh, when we jump back to it, we better condense, we better make everything quick and like have things, they wouldn't have had to do that. Not as much anyway. And then it's just a note, season 2 was just so disappointing. I was cringing in a lot of scenes. For example, some of the slow-mo and some of the interactions people had with Alina, they just changed too much and made many of their compelling characters flat. Hard agree. Very disappointing. Such a great start. And they had source material. I mean, how hard is it to look at something and say, you know what, this was good, but I could do a little bit better? I don't think people understand what's better. I think there's a lot of writers right now in filmmaking that don't understand what makes a story better, because we see this happening again and again and again. Okay, Daniel Heron, one of my patrons as well, says, some nice looking capes in this episode. More people should wear capes. And I think I know where you're getting that reference from.
You have to wear a cape in there.
Yes, everyone is in a cape.
And if you don't wear a cape, you'll look like a threepenny knee trembler.
Laszlo! He's right though. If you don't, you look like a right little tot.
Not 100% sure, but I'm thinking of What We Do in the Shadows. Funny that has shadow in the title too. But anyway, yes, I agree. There were some good capes. Honestly, the costumes did take a bit of a step down in season 2, but they were still pretty nice compared to what you get in most YA fantasy shows. So I was mostly pleased. from Atomic Age Pictures, who is also one of my patrons. And actually, he is a cinematographer who helped me figure out the lights. I mean, helped me. He basically set up my lights and my sound and told me which equipment to get. So thank you to Atomic Age Pictures. But his note, if you want to read the whole thing, basically saying that he noticed, he doesn't even watch the show, but just from the clips that I was playing, he saw that there were some very amateurish things going on in the staging. He says, I was watching that scene, it was the villains being bad for no particular reason. When I was talking about that, he says, in watching the clips from that scene, I noticed that the staging was very amateurish. I was watching that scene thinking to myself that this looks like a clip from a student film or an amateur production. Even though I could not hear the sound, the acting felt like an amateur production. Just my observation from having seen the clips you posted. And I think that was something that probably a lot of people felt in the second season, especially towards the end, that something happened in the production where it just felt like the quality of everything went down. It's very disappointing to have had such a good start and then to have things like this happen. Even the editing, I felt like sometimes made no sense, especially like that booby trap thing. What the heck? That booby trap thing really got to me. Okay, next we got Ella. Says, this is going to be a bit long and chaotic. I agree 100% with every single point you made, except the Inej and Toya thing. What gave me a huge pause was when you said in the last video that this could have been Game of Thrones for teenagers and young adults. And it is this exact thing I was feeling but couldn't put into words. I kind of feel like if Leigh Bardugo signed with HBO instead of Netflix, it would have reached that potential. Looking at The Last of Us and House of the Dragon, those are two just brilliant adaptations, even despite a few quirks in House of the Dragon. And I would say in also The Last of Us, that was not a perfect show. And delivered pretty much everything we could have asked for. Shadow and Bone would be so much better had the creators committed to, I guess, the level of maturity of Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. Yep, agree there. It's true, Matthias was absolutely useless and unnecessary in both seasons. However, back to the Game of Thrones thing, in the first season, there were similarly to Game of Thrones 3 main storylines, right? The Nina and Matthias one was very weak, but I feel like they could have fixed that by introducing Jurda Parem early, and similarly to Jon's arc at the Wall, it would hold so much more meaning and urgency, and they didn't even have to change a whole lot. Just have the threat of Parem simmer in the background, similarly to the Walkers. This is such a great suggestion. So, I refer to the White Walkers in Game of Thrones as the creeping doom. And what that is it's certain doom, but very slowly making its way to the front of the stage. And I think that's so effective when the readers can see this is a big deal and everybody should know about it, but not everybody does, or not everybody's taking it seriously. And we know it's coming. And just have it slowly making its way to the main storyline. That's what Jurda Parem could have been if they introduced it in season 1 of the show. They did not do that. And then when you get to the end of season 2, it sort of feels like, what's this, Supergirl coming in and killing everybody? And then we have Kaz's little narration going, it's Jurda Parem, it makes you super powerful, blah, blah, blah. That felt like it came out of nowhere. Now, if the writers knew that this was coming, which they would have because Six of Crows was already out, they could have hinted at it in Shadow and Bone season 1. They could have had Nina and Matthias aware of it in some way, or at least Matthias, right? Or they could have seen evidence of it somehow. It would have been a good idea to do that so that they, sort of like Jon Snow in Game of Thrones, are aware of this horrible thing that is coming. But again, that would have required Nina not to join the Crows until season 2 or 3 even, right? So that way they don't become aware of it. Either way, I don't know. It would have required a lot of different changes, but the Creeping Doom is so effective as a bad guy, and it's one that you build up to slowly. Like for me, I don't think that anything is as creepy as the Wall, the Shadowfold, right? The Shadowfold is the creepiest thing, and also Kirigan. But they could have made Jurda Parem seem even worse if they introduced it earlier on as this thing that we can see does worse things than Kirigan did. But nobody in the rest of the cast knows about it except like just Matthias or something. Like that would have been really cool. And then we're like, is Matthias going to tell anybody about this stuff? Like he should, because we would want Ravka to know about that. That would have been so cool. Creeping Doom. Do it, writers. Do the Creeping Doom. And if anyone asks you what is that and you call it the Creeping Doom, make sure to say, I learned it from me. I don't know. I think I coined the term. I've never heard anyone else say it. I just call it the Creeping Doom. Okay, so back to this. Oh yeah, that was it. Last question comes from Stephanie A, or Stephania, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, about Kaz and Inej. Another example of direct book quotes being used out of context by the show writers due to them mixing up their narrative storyline. Book Kinej, which I really like that nickname, Book Kinej's romantic storyline parallels Pride and Prejudice beat for beat. Ah, yes, we talked about this. You were the one. You were the one who made this comment. This moment was supposed to parallel Darcy's first marriage proposal, where he's seemingly done nothing to earn Inej's or Elizabeth's reciprocated affection in lieu of being standoffish, showing panic or withdrawing that he doesn't explain, and insisting that she's only useful as a spy. Inej's challenge to him, confessing his feelings, is, I will have you without your armor or not at all, parallels Elizabeth calling out Darcy, propelling him, Darcy or Kaz, to make things right in a redemptive arc in Crooked Kingdom, such as buying her freedom, fighting his touch aversion to help her wounds, and looking for her family and more that she won't spoil, and I got to the ending, finds the parents. I mean, what could be bigger than that? Even though Kaz knows it means losing her. But instead, the writers shoved all of these redemptive elements in Crooked Kingdom into the beginning of season 2, then begs Inej to stay, seemingly having shown that he's earned it, and then they just kept Inej's book response word for word, the whole, I'll have you all or not at all, or I'll have all of you without your armor or not at all, or whatever she says, all while ignoring her own trauma to physical touch. Your disappointment at Inej is purely the writer's failures to not have her react to the show's narrative. Yeah, this person is totally right. Stephanie A, that is exactly why this bugged me. And I think I talked about it in the last video, but Inej in the show did not look good at the end, at that moment. It looked like Kaz had shown promise and progress, and like he had earned some patience on her part, and she wasn't willing to give it. That kind of tells me, Inej, you didn't really love him. So, yikes. I think that writers in Hollywood today are struggling to understand certain aspects of character development and storytelling that are successful, why they are successful, and things that really don't work. And this is a very good example of it. We should have seen Inej seeing the change at this point. If this is what they were going to do in the show, she should have been like, okay. But then, of course, it would have changed everything that they wanted to do in the future. So what would the solution be? Follow the pacing of Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom a little better. Don't jump ahead and have all these things happen so early on. And maybe the only way to do that would have been to separate the two storylines from the start. So there you have it. Anyway, those are all of the questions that were asked of me. I have really enjoyed doing this comparison, and I do plan to do a read and comparison for season 3, including the King of Scars duology. I do plan to do that if one comes out. If one doesn't, I will consider reading the book anyway and doing a critique on it. I think we'll know by the end of this year if they're going to do a 3rd season, though. I mean, honestly, if we don't get an announcement by the end of summer, I'll be pretty surprised. So, or maybe they're going to wait until the writer's strike is over. That's probably what they're going to do. Anyway, that's all I got for now, but I've got a few more reviews coming out, and also give me some of your suggestions on some shows that you would like to see me review, or some books that you would like me to review. I have some ideas and things that I want to do. One of them was going to be Avatar: The Last Airbender and how I think they should do the live action, like what should they do. But since they announced that they're not going to come out with the Avatar: The Last Airbender until spring of next year, I kind of put that idea on hold. So I'm looking for the next best thing, and I'm interested to hear what you think that will be. Otherwise, I'm going to do what I think is right, and I'll see you then. So talk to you later.